The jungle was alive with whispers of danger. Birds with metallic feathers darted through the trees, their cries sharp as warning bells. On the edge of the river, a man crouched low, his hand brushing the dirt. The prints were fresh to large, for any earth animal, but too human-shaped to be pure beast. He looked up. The air was heavy with heat, yet something colder than water brushed the back of his neck. He knew he was being watched. His name was Kale. He wasn't a soldier, at least not anymore. Once, he had fought in Earth's border wars, but those days were behind him, or so he thought. Now he had been pulled into another kind of battle, one. Fought far from home, in a jungle that wasn't on any Earth map. His ship had crashed here 2 days ago, and survival had been his only goal, until he saw the signs. Someone else was hunting. From the shadows across the river, movement shimmered like heat on metal. A figure stepped forward, water dripping from a tall spear tipped with something that glowed like ice under moonlight. The figure was a woman, at least in shape. Her skin glowed faintly blue, smooth as polished stone. Her hair fell like silver fire down her back. She wore black, fitted armor made from hides Kale couldn't name, her body strong and graceful. Her eyes met his, sharp and unblinking. Kale didn't move. He'd learned long ago that predators didn't like sudden gestures. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. Then, to his surprise, she spoke in a language he understood, slow and deliberate, as though the words were new to her. "You follow the beast." Kale's jaw tightened. "I follow what might kill me." Her gaze didn't waver. "It will kill you. And me, if I do not kill it first." He almost smiled. "So we're both in trouble." The alien Huntress stepped closer, water rippling around her waist. She moved like someone who feared nothing, not the river's deep current, not the stranger before her. "You fight well," she said, her eyes flicking to the sword at his side. "I watched you yesterday. You took down 2 river lizards with nothing but steel. You were watching me?" He asked. Her lips curved into something between a smirk and a threat. "I was deciding whether to let you live, but now, I decide something else." Kale's instincts told him to be cautious, but there was no malice in her tone, only calculation. "And what's that?" "That a man who fights like you," she said slowly, "must not die without heirs." He froze, caught off guard by the bluntness. She stepped out of the river, her spear point dipping toward the ground, not in surrender, but in a sign of alliance. "The beast will come at dawn," she continued. "It smells you, it smells me. If we fight it together, it will die. If not, we will." Kale looked into her eyes, searching for deceit. Instead, he saw something else: respect. Maybe even admiration, though it was buried deep. She wasn't offering help out of kindness. She was making a choice, and he was part of it. A low, distant roar rolled through the jungle, shaking the leaves. Kale's hand went to his sword. The sound wasn't close, but it wasn't far enough. The Huntress turned toward the noise, her shoulders tightening. "It knows we are here," she said. The air grew still. Even the birds were silent now. Kale had faced war, but this was different. Here, he wasn't backed by soldiers or walls, just his own skill and the strange, deadly beauty of a woman who had decided his life was worth keeping. "For now, then we'd better be ready," he said. Her eyes narrowed with approval. "Follow." Human. She moved into the trees, her steps silent despite the armor and the weapon she carried. Kale followed, feeling the pull of something he couldn't name, an unspoken pact that had formed between them. Around them, the jungle seemed to close in, shadows deepening as the sun dipped lower. He didn't know if they would survive the coming fight. But he knew one thing for certain: whatever happened next, the alien Huntress had already marked him not as prey, but as something else entirely. The jungle swallowed them whole. Massive leaves hung overhead like green shields, dripping with dew that caught what little light broke through the canopy. The alien Huntress moved with a quiet confidence, her bare feet making almost no sound on the damp ground. Kale followed, careful to match her pace. Every so often, she would raise a hand for him to stop, tilting her head to listen to something he couldn't hear. "You're tracking it by sound?" he asked in a low voice. She shook her head. "By its hunger. When it is near, the air tastes different." Kale almost laughed at the strangeness of the answer, but then he remembered she had survived in this place long before he crashed here. If she said she could taste the danger, he wasn't going to argue. They crossed a shallow stream, the water swirling around Kale's boots. He watched as she stepped on the stones instead, moving in a zigzag pattern as though even her footprints were meant to hide from the predator. Her spear stayed upright, the glowing tip humming faintly in the dim light. "How long have you been hunting this thing?" he asked. She didn't look back. "3 nights. It killed my kin, 2 warriors stronger than me. Now it hunts me." Kale kept his hand near his sword. "Sounds personal." "It is more than personal," she said, finally glancing at him. "If it kills me, my bloodline ends. If it kills you, your skill ends. Both would be a waste." That strange, almost ceremonial way she spoke about him still unsettled him. The idea that she was already thinking of him in terms of bloodlines made the air between them heavy. The undergrowth thickened ahead, and she crouched low, signaling for him to do the same. Through the leaves, Kale spotted a half-eaten carcass of something that looked like a cross between a boar and a crocodile. The flesh was torn, but not eaten clean, just mauled and left to rot. "It kills for sport," Kale murmured. The Huntress nodded grimly. "It is testing us." A sharp crack of wood echoed through the forest. Birds burst into the air in a flurry of metallic feathers. The Huntress' grip on her spear tightened. "It's close." Kale's pulse quickened. His training told him to prepare, but his gut told him this was unlike any battle he'd faced. He drew his sword slowly, the steel gleaming faintly in the scattered light. The sound came again, this time lower, like the crunch of heavy footsteps on damp earth. Then, from somewhere to the left, a long, low growl rolled through the air. Kale felt it in his chest. "Do not run," she whispered. "It wants you to." Her eyes locked on his. For the first time, he saw a spark of something human in them. Concern. "If it charges me, strike its side. If it charges you, I will." "Strike." Before Kale could respond, the jungle erupted. Branches snapped, vines tore, and a massive shape exploded into the clearing. The creature was the size of a small car, its body sleek like a panther's, but armored with scales that shimmered black and green. Its eyes glowed an unnatural gold, and when it opened its mouth, Kale saw rows of jagged teeth that dripped with venom. It didn't hesitate. It lunged straight for the Huntress. She moved like lightning, sidestepping the first swipe of its claws and thrusting her spear forward. The glowing tip struck the creature's shoulder, searing its flesh with a hiss. The beast roared in fury and spun toward her. Kale didn't think. He moved. His sword came down in a wide arc, slicing across the beast's flank. The blow wasn't deep enough to kill, but it made the creature stumble. The Huntress seized the moment, vaulting onto its back with an agility that defied belief. She drove the spear down again, this time into the thick muscles near its neck. The creature bucked wildly, throwing her off. She hit the ground hard, rolling to her feet with practiced ease. Kale stepped between her and the beast as it turned on her again. The thing's eyes locked on him now, as if deciding he was the greater threat. "Stay behind me," he said without thinking. Her voice was sharp. "No, we fight together." The beast lunged again, and they moved as one, her spear striking high while his sword cut low. The creature's roars shook the trees, and each time it tried to retreat, they drove it back. But it was fast, and its armor deflected more blows than Kale liked. Finally, with a scream that echoed through the forest, the Huntress leapt forward and drove her spear deep into the beast's chest. The glowing tip flared bright, and a shockwave rippled out, knocking Kale back a step. The creature convulsed once, then collapsed, the light fading from its eyes. Silence fell. Kale's breathing was ragged, his muscles aching. He looked at the Huntress, who was standing over the kill, her chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. She looked at him, and this time there was no calculation in her gaze, only a fierce, approving heat. "You fight like my ancestors," she said softly. "A man like you should not vanish from this world without leaving his line." Kale didn't know whether to be honored or wary. But he knew one thing: whatever had just passed between them, it wasn't over. The carcass of the beast still steamed on the jungle floor, the glow from the Huntress's spear fading to a cold shimmer. Insects were already gathering, drawn by the scent of blood. Kale wiped his sword on a broad leaf, never taking his eyes off her. She crouched beside the kill, running a hand along its scaled hide, as if memorizing every scar and pattern. "This one will not trouble us again," she said. Kale raised an eyebrow. "Us?" She looked up, her silver hair spilling over her shoulder. "When you kill together, you are bound by the hunt. That is our way." Kale let out a short laugh. "Your way's a bit different than mine." Her expression stayed serious. "Your way ends with death or medals. Ours ends with bloodlines." That word again. Bloodlines. It made Kale uneasy, not because he didn't understand, but because he did. Her people saw skill in battle as something rare, something worth keeping alive in the most literal way possible. Before he could respond, she stood and gestured for him to follow. "We take the head to my people. They will see the truth of you." Kale frowned. "Truth?" "That you are worthy," she said simply. They began the trek back through the jungle. The path seemed less hostile now, as if the land itself recognized what they had done. Still, Kale kept his sword loose in its sheath. The jungle was never truly safe. As they walked, he studied her in the shifting light. She was strong, that much was obvious, but there was more, something in the way she never wasted a movement, how her eyes constantly scanned without panic. She wasn't fearless, she was aware. That was more dangerous. "You never told me your name," Kale said. She glanced over her shoulder. "Lura." "Lura," he repeated. "That's different." She gave the faintest hint of a smile. "And you are Kale, short, strong, like your sword." They moved in silence for a while, the distant rumble of the river growing louder. When they emerged from the tree line, Kale saw a cluster of structures built high into the trees, connected by thick vines and bridges. Fires burned and hanging, cages casting orange light over the scene. The air smelled of smoke and spiced meat. "Your village?" Kale asked. "My clan," she corrected. "The hunters of Vera." Eyes watched them from above as they crossed the clearing. Figures moved along the bridges, tall, lithe shapes with the same glowing blue skin as Lura. Some carried bows with strings of woven metal. Others held spears that glimmered faintly in the firelight. When they reached the base of the largest tree, two warriors descended, their expressions guarded. One was older, with silver markings along his jaw. The other looked barely past youth, but carried himself with rigid discipline. Lura spoke quickly in her own language, gesturing to the beast's severed head slung over her shoulder. The warrior's eyes flicked to Kale, narrowing slightly. Older one finally spoke in the same slow, deliberate common tongue Lura had used earlier. "This human fought with you?" "He fought as one of us," Lura said firmly. "Without him, I would not stand here now." The younger warrior's gaze sharpened. "Then why bring him here? A human has no place among the blood of Vera." Lura stepped forward, her tone cutting through the night air. "This one does. His skill is rare, his courage is proven. He must not die without leaving his line." The younger warrior scoffed, but the older one studied Kale for a long moment before speaking again. "If what you say is true, he will prove it to all. If not, the jungle will take him." Kale folded his arms. "Sounds like I don't get a say in this." Lura's eyes flicked to him, and for the first time, there was a glint of humor. You always have a choice, but some choices mean death. The warriors stepped aside, allowing them to pass. Kale followed Lura up a narrow vine bridge that swayed with every step. From this height, the jungle stretched endlessly, the canopy glowing faintly under the moons. They entered a large platform at the center of the village. Dozens of clan members had gathered, their faces illuminated by the flickering firelight. In the middle stood a raised stone circle, its surface marked with deep grooves. "This is where we judge," Lura said quietly. Kale glanced around. "And how exactly do you judge?" "You will fight," she replied. "Not to kill, but to show your worth. If you bleed without falling, they will accept you. And if I fall?" Kale asked. She met his gaze steadily. "Then you will not. Live to see dawn." The crowd murmured as the older warrior stepped into the circle, gesturing for Kale to join him. The Huntress's voice was low but urgent. "Fight well, Kale. Show them what I saw." Kale stepped into the circle, feeling the heat of the fire on his back and the weight of 100 eyes on him. He didn't know their customs, their rules, or their limits. But he knew how to survive a fight. The older warrior drew two curved blades, the metal catching the light. Kale drew his sword in response, the sound ringing in the tense air. Somewhere beyond the firelight, a drum began to beat. The drumbeat echoed through the treetop village, slow and heavy like the heartbeat of the jungle itself. Kale shifted his weight, his sword angled low. Across the stone circle, the older warrior circled him, both curved blades held with easy confidence. From the crowd, Lura's eyes followed every movement. She stood at the edge of the firelight, her spear planted in the ground beside her, her posture like a coiled spring. The warrior struck first, a sudden blur of motion. One blade came high, the other low, forcing Kale to step back sharply. The stone beneath his boots was slick with dust, and he felt the edge of the circle at his heel. The crowd murmured in approval of the attack. Kale countered with a quick step forward, his sword arcing toward the warrior's ribs. The alien twisted, the strike glancing off the flat of his lower blade. Then, with surprising speed, the warrior hooked one sword behind Kale's leg and swept it forward. Kale stumbled but didn't fall, catching himself with a sideways pivot that brought his blade up just in time to block another strike. Sparks flew as steel met alien alloy. "You fight to stay alive," the warrior said in a low, almost amused tone. "But here, you must fight to be remembered." Kale pushed back hard, breaking their lock. "Guess I'll do both." The drumbeat quickened, matching the rhythm of their footwork. The warriors' attacks came faster now, testing Kale's endurance. Each strike carried precision, no wasted movement, no hesitation. But Kale had fought men like this before. Patience was the key dot when the alien lunged. Kale sidestepped and let the warrior's momentum carry him forward. He brought the pommel of his sword down hard against the alien's shoulder, staggering him. A few gasps rose from the crowd. The warrior straightened, eyes narrowing. "You learn quickly." "I had a good teacher," Kale replied, flicking his gaze briefly toward Lura. They clashed again, blades ringing in the night air. Kale caught the high strike, spun under the second, and slammed his shoulder into the alien's chest. The impact drove them both toward the edge of the circle. The crowd roared, sensing the fight was shifting, but the warrior wasn't finished. With a guttural sound, he swung both blades in a wide, crossing slash. Kale dropped to one knee, the strike hissing over his head, and thrust his sword upward. The point stopped a hair's breadth from the alien's throat. The drums went silent. Warrior froze, breathing hard. Then, slowly he stepped back, raising his hands to show the fight was done. He gave a sharp nod of respect before turning to the crowd. "This human bleeds with honor," he announced. "He will stand among us." Ripple of approval moved through the gathering. Lura stepped forward, her expression unreadable until she reached him. Then, just for a moment, her lips curved into a smile. "You fought well," she said softly. "You fight like someone who understands what life is worth." Kale sheathed his sword, still catching his breath. "I fight because I like breathing." Her smile deepened, but there was something else in her gaze now, a quiet certainty, as if she had already decided something important about him. The crowd began to disperse, the tension fading into the hum of night. Fires crackled, and the scent of roasted meat drifted through the air. Lura gestured for Kale to follow her across a narrow bridge, toward a smaller platform on the far side of the village. "This is where you rest," she said, stepping into a round hut with walls made of woven branches and leaves. Inside, a hammock hung between two beams, and a small carved table held a bowl of fresh water. Kale stepped in, glancing around. "Cozy, it is safe," she replied. "That is more important." She poured water into a smaller bowl and handed it to him. "Tomorrow, we hunt again, but this time, not a beast." Kale took a drink, his eyes narrowing. "What are we hunting?" She met his gaze without blinking. "Truth, my people are not united. Some see you as a gift. Others see you as a threat. If we do not show them why you are here, they will send you to the jungle alone." Kale set the bowl down. "And if that happens?" Her voice was calm, but her words carried weight. "Then you will not live long enough to leave any heirs." Outside, the drums began again, but softer now, an old rhythm, steady and low. Kale lay back in the hammock listening. Somewhere beyond the village, the jungle whispered, and he knew this was only the beginning of something much larger. The morning broke with a deep orange light filtering through the woven walls of Kale's hut. The air was cooler, carrying the scent of wet leaves and distant rain. He pushed himself up from the hammock and stepped outside. The village was alive, with motion warriors sharpening weapons, hunters preparing bundles of spears, and traders carrying baskets of smoked meat across the bridges. Lura was waiting for him at the edge of the platform, her spear slung across her back. She was speaking with the older warrior from last night, their voices low but urgent. When she saw Kale, she waved him over. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. Kale crossed his arms. "I figured as much." She glanced toward the far edge of the village where a group of warriors stood apart, watching them with cold eyes. "Some believe your victory was luck. They say a true hunter must prove himself twice before he can be trusted." Kale shrugged. "So what's the test this time? Another fight?" Lura shook her head. "Worse. A hunt against one of our own." The older warrior spoke then, his tone heavy. "They will send a challenger to track and mark you. If they succeed, you leave the clan. If you defeat them, they accept you. But no killing unless they try first." Kale looked between them. "And if I refuse?" Lura's answer was quiet but sharp. "Then you are already marked." Before Kale could respond, a figure emerged from the watching group, a tall, broad-shouldered warrior with dark ridged markings across his arms. His eyes were sharp and filled with something Kale recognized instantly, the hunger to prove dominance. "That's your challenger," Lura said. "His name is Varric. He doesn't like outsiders." "He also doesn't like me," Kale smirked. "Sounds like we're going to get along great." Varric stepped into the center platform, his voice carrying. "At midday, the hunt begins. The human runs. I follow. If he escapes until moonrise, he wins. If I catch him, he leaves." The crowd murmured, some voices cheering, others laughing. Kale met Varric's stare without flinching. "Fine, but don't cry when I ruin your day." Lura pulled him aside as the crowd dispersed. "This is not like fighting the beast," she warned. "Varric knows this jungle better than you know your own hand. He will try to turn it against you." Kale adjusted the strap on his pack. Then I'll just have to turn it back. By midday, the entire village had gathered to watch Kale step down into the forest. Varric stood on the opposite side, armed, only with a short spear and a curved knife. The older warrior raised his hand. The hunt begins now. Kale moved quickly, slipping into the undergrowth. He didn't run outright running left tracks. Instead, he weaved between trees, crossing streams, and doubling back to break his trail. He'd hunted men before, and he knew the trick wasn't speed. It was unpredictability. But Varric was good. Too good. Within an hour, Kale heard him closing in silent at first, then the faintest crunch of a branch. Kale dropped low, sliding into a shallow gully thick with ferns. He waited, controlling his breath. Varric passed above him, scanning the trees. Kale nearly smiled. He crept in the opposite direction, moving fast now. The jungle sounds returned: chirps, clicks, and the distant rush of water. He followed the sound until he reached a narrow riverbank. Its muddy slope dotted with sharp rocks. Perfect. Kale crouched, grabbing 2 fist-sized stones and placing them in the mud as markers. He smeared his boots in the same mud, then waded into the water, letting the current hide his tracks. When he emerged further downstream, he was behind Varric's path. He climbed the low ridge and waited. Minutes later, Varric arrived at the riverbank, scanning for signs. His gaze fell on the stone markers, and his shoulders stiffened. He stepped forward, right into the mud slope Kale had chosen. Varric's footing slipped. He caught himself with his spear, but in that moment, Kale dropped from the ridge, kicking the weapon away and pressing his blade to Varric's throat. "No kill," Kale said evenly. "But I could have." Varric's jaw tightened. He pushed Kale back, picking up his spear. "You fight like one of us," he admitted grudgingly. "But that doesn't make you one of us." Kale stepped aside, letting him pass. "That's not your choice anymore." They returned to the village together as the sun began to sink. The crowd parted for them, and the older warrior stepped forward. "The human is unmarked. He has passed the hunt." Cheers rose from some, silence from others. Lura walked to Kale's side, her gaze holding his. "Now they will think twice before doubting you." Kale nodded. "And you?" She didn't look away. "I do not doubt you. I claim you." Her words were soft but deliberate, and Kale could feel the weight they carried. In her culture. Around them, some warriors murmured in surprise, others in disapproval. Whatever came next, Kale knew the line had been drawn, and not just between him and Varric. Asterisk night settled over the treetop village, the fires burning low and the air thick with the hum of insects. Kale sat on the edge of the platform, sharpening his sword. Across from him, Lura stood with her back to the railing, arms crossed, watching the shadows between the trees. "They won't all accept me," Kale said quietly. "They don't have to," she replied. "But they will not dare move against you while I stand here." Her confidence was steady, but Kale could see the flicker of tension in her eyes. She was listening for something, waiting. "What's coming?" he asked. "Not what," she said, turning her gaze toward the jungle. "Who?" Before he could ask, the warning drums sounded short, sharp beats that sent a ripple of alarm through the village. Warriors moved quickly across the bridges, weapons in hand. The older warrior from before appeared, his face grim. "They come," he told Lura. "The Rithek clan." Kale's grip on his sword tightened. "Friends of yours?" "Enemies," Lura said. "They raid villages, steal bloodlines, and kill those they cannot take. They will want you." The words hung in the air like a blade. Kale understood now his skill in battle was not just a mark of survival here, but a currency. And to the wrong people, that currency was worth stealing. The first arrows came in a whisper, slicing through the night air. One thudded into the post beside Kale's head. Warriors shouted as shadowed figures began scaling the ropes and bridges. "Stay close to me," Lura ordered, but Kale didn't wait to be told twice. He moved with her toward the outer platform, where the fighting was already fierce. Rethek warriors, taller, heavier, their skin mottled in dark green, pushed forward with brutal force. The clash of metal rang in the air, mingling with the guttural cries of combat. Kale fought like a storm breaking. His blade found gaps in armor, his footwork forcing opponents into each other's strikes. Beside him, Lura moved with lethal grace, her spear a silver flash in the firelight. They fought back to back, the enemy pressing from all sides. A massive Rethak warrior surged toward them, swinging a jagged axe. Kale ducked under the first blow, driving his sword up through the warrior's side. The body dropped heavily, but before Kale could pull his blade free, another enemy lunged. Lura's spear took the attacker in the throat. The fight churned across the platform, and Kale saw the older warrior locked in battle with two Rithik raiders. Without thinking, Kale moved to help, parrying one blow before driving the enemy over the railing. More were coming. "Too many. They'll overwhelm us," Kale warned. "Not if we take their leader," Lura said, eyes narrowing. She pointed to a tall figure directing the attack from the far bridge. His armor was heavier, his weapon a long barbed spear gleamed. In the firelight, Kale didn't hesitate. "Then let's go." They pushed through the melee, every step a fight for ground. When they reached the bridge, the Rithak leader turned to face them, a cruel grin splitting his face. "You're the human," he said in a low, mocking voice. "I will take you alive." Kale's answer was steel. He feinted left, drawing the leader's guard, while Lura came from the side, her spear striking with enough force to stagger him. The bridge swayed under their movements, the ropes creaking. The leader countered with brutal swings, forcing them back. One blow cut across Kale's arm, but he ignored the pain, driving forward with a series of rapid strikes. Lura found her, opening and thrust her spear deep into the leader's chest. He stumbled, eyes wide, before collapsing onto the bridge. The sight sent a wave of uncertainty through the Rithik ranks. Some fought on, but others began to retreat into the shadows. With their leader dead, the attack faltered. Within minutes, the remaining Rithak were either cut down or fleeing into the jungle. The warning drums shifted to a steady beat of victory. Kale leaned on his sword, breathing hard. Blood streaked his arm, but the wound wasn't deep. Lura stepped beside him, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. "You fight as though the battle is the only thing that matters," she said. Kale met her gaze. "Sometimes it is." She studied him for a moment, then spoke with quiet certainty. "The clan will speak of this night for generations. And I will tell them you are not just a warrior, but the one who fought beside me when it mattered most." Her tone shifted lower now. "A man like that must not die without heirs." Kale almost laughed, but the weight in her voice kept him silent. She wasn't speaking as a warrior now, but as someone who had made a choice, and he understood what it meant in her culture. The older warrior approached, his expression respectful. "The human stays," he said simply. "Any who challenge this will face me." As the fires burned low and the village settled into the uneasy calm after battle, Kale stood on the platform. Beside Lura, the jungle stretching into darkness beyond. He had come here a stranger, an outsider. Now, whether by choice or by the Huntress's will, he was something else entirely.